Just everybody that's here, thank you so much. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, to our partners, U.S. Bank, USC Latino Alumni Association, USC Marshall, Foundation for California Community Colleges. I just said, hey, you want to be part of this? Do you want to partner? And it was yes, instantly. It was wonderful to them to see just everybody step up and want to come together and celebrate the book, our panelists' stories in the book, because many of our alumni's stories are in the book. Our panelists, the women, the leaders you're going to see today, their stories, their vulnerability in the interviews was phenomenal. You don't see women in powerful positions get that vulnerable. But it's so beautiful because that's what Graciously Assertive is all about. I believe without vulnerability, you cannot grow. You cannot have a kind world. You need that vulnerability. So before I get started about the book, I want to thank a few people that are here. And I think I'm the only one up here that's going to use glasses, huh? Really? First, I'd like to thank our featured leaders in the book, Senator Susan Rubio, Dr. Daisy Gonzales, Deputy Chancellor, California Community Colleges, Reba Dominski, Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Social Responsibility Officer, U.S. Bank Corp. And President of U.S. Bank Foundation, and Keetha Mills, President and CEO, Foundation for California Community Colleges. I'd like to thank those that endorsed the book and gave the quotes in back of the book, that you literally did it in like 3 to 4 days. I just called them, texted them, and said, I need a favor. My publisher said, I need to get these quotes in. If I send you the book, can you get me a quote like in 72 hours? That means read the book. And they all said yes, without even thinking twice, which to me is just such a blessing. And first is Congressman Tony Cardenas and his beautiful wife, Norma Cardenas. We had some help with Norma, who stepped in and said, honey, we got to do this in 72 hours. Honorable Rosario Marin, former U.S. Treasurer and first immigrant Treasurer of the United States. Dr. Party Madavi, President, University of Laverne, and the first woman of color president that just gave me an honorary doctorate degree this Saturday at the University of Laverne. And Yvette Garcia, one of our alumni and the former head of diversity, inclusion, and belonging for NVIDIA. So there's a few other guests I'd like to just thank for being here. Aura Vasquez, Emeritus Commissioner, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Dr. Martha Garcia, President, Mount San Antonio College. Dr. Manuel Baca, Trustee, Mount San Antonio College. Dr. Mark Sanchez, President, Southwestern College. Dr. Ebony Jeffries, Dean of Institutional Effectiveness, California Chancellor's Office. Dr. Sed Peñedo, CEO, Mexican American Opportunity Foundation. Helen Torres, CEO, Hope, Hispanas Organized for Political Equality. Ken Bonner, USC Viterbi School of Engineering, Associate Dean for Inclusion and Diversity Initiatives. Dr. Maria Morales, USC Assistant Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer. Dominica Lynch, Executive Director, Aspen Institute Latinos in Society. These are all individuals who have played a pivotal role in supporting the work that we do, the programs that we have, either by endorsing, sponsoring, funding, being faculty. Dr. Eric Bishop, I want to give him a big thank you over there. He's been one of our greatest supporters. Thank you so much, Dr. Eric Bishop. Everything that we do, we would not be able to do without the great support of all our believers. That's why I say believers, and especially our alumni who keep coming back as advisors. They're all volunteers. And they're like, you're not getting rid of us. Keep coming back. And it's because when they contribute to other women's growth, they grow. And it's only through contribution that we truly find fulfillment. So before I bring our panelists, our leaders up, I want to share with you how Graciously Assertive came about. So I've been doing this work. This is my 5th book. I've been doing this work for about 22 years now. My first book was in 2001. And about 10 years ago, I launched the Latina Global Executive Leadership Institute in partnership with the USC Marshall School of Business. And it was a leadership program for women, what I thought would be a regular leadership program for women. There was nothing regular about it, though, because women started sharing in ways that they felt safe, that didn't feel safe anywhere else. And what I started realizing is they started becoming so empowered, they would go back to their bosses and tell them exactly how they felt. That did not go off well. And so what I realized is with power comes responsibility. And with responsibility, it's about communication and the impact you want to have. So it's how you communicate that you're able to have that impact. So I reversed engineered and said, okay, what kind of impact do we want to have? What do we need to do to get there? So I started teaching the women about being gracious and leading with kindness and ensuring you never ask for anything you're not willing to offer. If you want your boss to listen to you, listen first. If you want your boss to be empathetic first. Everybody has a story. And we started sharing these principles and studying this. And over the years, not only were they effective in their communication, I started realizing that they were not only doubling, tripling their salary, starting new businesses, but they were having better marriages. They were being better parents, better community leaders. They started becoming better human beings. And I said, okay, hold on. I didn't plan it like this. What's going on here? And what I realized was that the empathy they learned to lead with, just by communicating differently, started to carry over in different parts of their lives. And the results they were getting were phenomenal. Once again, not only in success with their careers, but as human beings, because husbands would call me and say, we want her to go back to your program. Children would say, thank you for giving me my mother back, or thanking me for giving me a whole new level of a mother. And I started realizing that once they started practicing this level of empathy and leading with empathy and getting the positive results, they started carrying it over in different parts of their lives, and better results came about. So I said, okay, this is amazing. And the stories of transformation I kept hearing throughout the years. So I said, okay, it's time for me to share these stories, but not only share these stories, I need to create now a formal, graciously assertive communication model. I've been teaching these for 10 years, but now I got to literally put it into a model. Before, everything I've always done, and that's why I know it's a gift, and I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. I know I'm doing God's work, I feel. Even though I don't know how I do what I do or the impact that I have, I say I need to be able to do this in a way that can systematize it, to teach it in ways and models. So I decided to interview over 100 of our graduates and take all the transcripts and go away to Laguna Beach for a week and just review all the transcripts, see what I can find patterns, and see what it is that I can come up with to see where is this transformation coming from. And as I read through the transcripts of the stories the women shared with me, there was common principles that kept coming up. So I started putting these big poster boards on walls and started, and I documented this on one of social media because there's like poster boards on walls and markers I was writing. And there was 8 pillars that were consistent, that really defined who these leaders, who they were becoming. And so I'll share with you what these 8 pillars are, because that's how I was able to identify our featured leaders today. Once I got the 8 pillars down, I said, okay, what leaders out there are living in these pillars that I can feature in my book? So, and this is from the book, I just pulled it here. What is a graciously assertive leader? A graciously assertive leader masterfully integrates the essence of assertiveness with the warmth of graciousness, forming a leadership style that is both powerful and nurturing. This style is built upon 8 foundational pillars, each enhancing the graciously assertive leader's ability to guide and inspire effectively while fostering a respectful and collaborative environment. Pillar number 1 is self-awareness. You have to know yourself and have to know your strengths, your weaknesses, and who you are before you lead others. You have to lead yourself. So leading with self-awareness is the number 1 pillar. Number 2 is social awareness. You cannot lead others unless you understand how your behavior impacts others. So you need to be socially aware of your environment and your energy you're putting out there, and how, you can think you're inspiring people, but if you're not getting the response they're being inspired, you're not doing it. So it really is about social awareness and understanding how your behavior impacts others. The third is self-regulation. Self-awareness is number 1, understanding yourself, understanding how your behavior is impacting others. Self-regulation is, what am I going to do about it now? if I'm not having the impact that I want to have? How am I going to self-regulate myself in ways that I have the impact I want? Pillar 4 is self-compassion. This one we struggle with. I would say 99% of the women that I know in general struggle with self-compassion. We are so hard on ourselves as women. We truly are. And self-compassion is key to self-forgiveness, because then we are so hard on others if we're not compassionate towards ourselves. The next one is gratitude, pillar 5. Living from a place of gratitude is a key to graciousness. If you're not in gratitude, you cannot be gracious. If you're pissed off, you cannot be gracious. So you got to shift that energy and think about something you can be grateful for to get into the gracious energy. And gracious is truly equals kindness. And like you'll hear from Reba from US Bank is on a kindness campaign to transform corporate America. That's what she told me in her interview. I want to transform corporate America to kindness. I said, I love that. I'm going to take you on the road. Let's go. Because honestly, and when they interviewed me out there, the different channels, they were asking me if there's one message you want people to leave with, what is it? I said, lead and communicate with kindness. Because you never know what people are going through. Everybody has a story. And if you're not leading with kindness, they're not going to respond. One person has the power to transform a relationship. One person has the power to transform a communication. So leading with kindness, well, you're still self-advocating, right? You still self-advocate, and that's why assertiveness is the self-advocacy, graciousness is the kindness. The next one, pillar number 6, is zero tolerance for judgment. If you're one of my alumni, you know I don't mess around when it comes to that. You want to judge? We'll see you next time. We don't tolerate that. We ask women to leave the program if they do, because that completely just disrupts the safe space. And we do it with love and kindness. We rarely have to do it, but we have done it because we just feel they're not ready yet to be in that safe space. So being a leader that doesn't tolerate judgment and being able to say, you know what, this is how we're going to show up here, and this is what we're not going to allow in this environment, is truly a graciously assertive leader. Pillar number 7 is healthy boundaries. Another one as women struggle with. Our healthy boundaries, our struggle with them, is we work too much, for the most part, right? And I think it was Reba that said, in one of the interviews, she said something that, you know, my CEO emails me like on a Friday or Saturday or something, like I feel I need to respond. Do I really think he's staying up waiting for my response? She says, they're not doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. We want to be perfect. We want to do everything. We want to respond now. Yet we need to be kinder and more compassionate with ourselves. So healthy boundaries is something that all our leaders, including myself, are working on. And pillar number 8, graciously assertive communication, which is leading with, the first element is leading with empathy. And I always say, if you want the individual to be empathetic with you, you better be empathetic first. Do not ask for something you're not willing to offer. If you think about it, I think it's in the Bible or something. It's do unto others the way you want to be done to you. I mean, it's very simple. You know, we cannot ask the world to give us something we're not willing to give the world. So how can we ask anybody to give us something we're not willing to give them? It's just leading with that. So once I figured out these were the 8 pillars that these graciously assertive young leaders were living by, and they were figuring it out, right, as they went. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I started documenting this and writing examples. Then I said, okay, which leaders out there that are, you know, at the highest level of their corporation, of government, of education, of foundation, that are at the C level, that are living graciously assertive. So I started doing my research and went to certain individuals that I knew. And I said, you know, and then I studied them. I said, how gracious are they when I make them mad? I'm just kidding. I asked people, and there was a consistency of response, right? Of, oh no matter what happens, this person always shows up this way. No matter what happens, this person's always gracious. Even when they're upset, they'll take a deep breath, they'll go to the other room, and then they'll come back. And they're able to manage individuals like that. So I selected these phenomenal leaders you're going to meet right now that I'm going to introduce them, that are here with me today. They came in, none of them are local, so they came in from Sacramento, came in from Minneapolis, all the way from Minneapolis, San Diego, another from Sacramento. The only one that's not here today is Keetha Brown, our beautiful Keetha Brown. She called me and said, she was planning to be here. She said the CEO of MUFG Bank, she's an executive there, chief DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, has selected me for a leadership program in Switzerland. What should I do? Girl, please. If you don't go, I'm going to go. So go, represent us. We need more women there. So she said, okay, I'm going to do that. So, ladies, I'm going to introduce now our graciously assertive leaders that are in the book. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them as I bring them up, and then we're going to ask them some questions, and we're going to have a little fun chat. So, I'm going to start with Dr. Daisy Gonzales. Please come on up, Dr. Daisy. Dr. Daisy Gonzales is the Deputy Chancellor for the California Community Colleges. She is a student-centered leader. Her lifelong commitment to social justice, equity, and inclusion guides the empowerment of communities and encourages partnerships that enable economic mobility. Having served in higher education and statewide fiscal policy for more than 20 years, she currently serves as the second highest administrator for the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, where she formulates policies distributing local assistance and capital outlay funds for 73 community college districts. She also designs programs to enhance student success and advocates for resources for learning environments for 1.9 million students. Thank you for being here, Dr. Daisy. Next, we have, all the way from Minneapolis, Reba Dominski. Please come on up. And we have, I think, 26 U.S. Bank supporters here. Okay. Reba is the Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Social Responsibility Officer of U.S. Bancorp and President of the U.S. Bank Foundation. Leading the company's efforts to maximize both social and environmental impacts, she recently led the successful negotiation of the largest community benefits plan in the history of banking, a 5-year, $100 billion commitment to increase access to capital in low to moderate income communities, including communities of color. Before joining U.S. Bancorp in June 2015, she served 21 years in various leadership capacities at Target Corporation, including sourcing, planning, operations, and merchandising, and later serving on Target's CRE team as Senior Director of Education and Community Relations, leading Target's $1 billion commitment to education. Thank you so much for being here. Next, we have Keetha Mills. Come on up, Keetha. I feel like Price is Right. Come on up. Keetha Mills is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation for California Community Colleges. Since 2012, she has led the foundation as a nonprofit auxiliary partner to the California Community Colleges, the largest system of higher education in the nation. As a community college alumni, Mills understands the value of a community college experience and the power that education has to change lives. She has guided the organization to achieve steady and sustainable growth and providing more than $165 million in annual resources to students, colleges, and communities. All I know is when I started on the foundation board maybe 4 years ago, we were like at 53 million, and now we're at, what, almost 200 million? Keetha, CEO, has led us there. Thank you, Keetha. And last but never least, my dear friend, Senator Susan Rubio, come on up. Senator, I'm going to share with him really quick on what happened when you first started reading my book, when you called me the next day. Can I tell them?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
It's truthful. It's honest.
She called me I was supposed to interview her for the foreword of the book on a Sunday or something, and she had gotten the book, and she calls me that morning sobbing. And I'm like, Senator, what's wrong? Like, are you okay? She's like, I need more time to do this interview. I said, why? She said, because I just read what you sent me, and it's impacting me so much because it's teaching me how I can do things differently. I'm not sure. Do you want to share really quick?
Yeah.
Well, I had to read, the pieces that she had put together in order to, to write the forward. And there was an area where it just talks about how we need to take setbacks and celebrate them. When we do it ourselves, it's not a big deal. But I had just gone through House of Origin, where you figure out what bills passed or what didn't pass, right? And I had 10 bills. And one didn't pass. And one of my young staffers came in, and she was so happy. She was elated, saying, "But Senator, you're great. You're great. You passed 9 bills." And I couldn't get past my setback. And I remember I said, "Yes, Crystal, but the most important one didn't pass." And she kept trying to get me away from that. "But you passed 9. That's amazing. Nobody does that." But I kept saying, "Oh, Crystal, but I wish that one would have passed. It was so important to me." So when I read that, it just, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I should have taken my staff and celebrated her. She was so happy, and she was wanting that validation, and I couldn't get past that one setback, and I was a mess. I was like, I wish I would have read it the day before, but I just didn't give her moment, And so to all of those listening, I think we're so caught up with our own success that we fail to see who's next to us, and in that moment, she deserved her moment. I should have turned around and said, "Thank you so much. We did this together." And she went on and on trying to just make me see how wonderful I was. And I failed to turn around and tell her how wonderful she was. And I got caught up with that one little piece. But anyhow, that was a very successful year, and I could not recognize it.
But you went back.
Yes. So I did go back, and I figured out how to rectify the problem. I celebrated her. It was her birthday a few weeks later, and we had a big celebration. And I had the opportunity to make it up, but my heart still ached that I couldn't give her that moment. She just was so happy. You should have seen her face. That's why I keep thinking and somewhat getting emotional, because I should have really embraced her and said, "Who cares about that one bill? Like, we celebrate 9, and I was stuck on that one bill." It was an important bill, but that's not the point. The point was that for her, that moment meant so much, and I felt her in that moment. And so every time my staff laughs, because I say this over and over again, I want to say something, and I pause. I'm like, "No, wait a minute. I need to be a better human being." So before I speak, I keep saying that over and over. So that's become my mantra. I need to be a better human being. So thank you for letting me share.
I'm telling you, these little things make shifts in people, and then they start becoming better human beings. All right, let me get my questions here. And whoever's managing time, I know we're supposed to go till 7:30. Let's go till 7:45, so we give the full 30 minutes. There you go, Reese. Okay, thank you.
Keetha and I know each other, but I was saying I honestly learned a lot more about you, and it was a beautiful, beautiful interview, so thank you. My childhood, yes, that was the question. I have lived an incredible life, and I recognize what I look like on the outside, and I recognize everything that I have achieved, but I come from a really challenging background. What I can tell you is it's incredible, because at the age of 36, I became the Deputy Chancellor for the largest system of public higher education in this country. And by 37, in the middle of a pandemic, declining enrollment, climate change, wildfires, I became the acting and the interim chancellor for that same system. But I wouldn't be here without the people that inspired me, including my mentor, who was my mentor since I was in foster care, Doreen, who's in the back, and her husband, who's a USC alum, and they've always been here for me. And it has been an incredible life, because they taught me about service, not just public service, but kindness. For a foster youth to end up going to community colleges, earning a 4-year degree, earning a doctorate, and then to be in all of these leadership roles, I only got here because of that bus driver who would wait for me to get on that bus, that chemistry teacher who made sure that I knew how to apply for community colleges, and FAFSA in the state of California. And those are really instrumental components of who I then became, because what they were teaching me was to see the humanity in human beings, to know that there was a story, and to then open the doors to resources and opportunities. That's who I have become, and I'm very clear of who I am and who I am not. I'm very clear in my leadership style. I am inclusive, because I was brought in and empowered as a part of that journey. I wasn't told you're a foster youth and you have nothing to say. No, I was told, what are you going to do to turn back around and empower the next generation of foster youth? That's inclusion. I'm collaborative because every single part of the journey was about building a better system. Even when I met Doreen, she was always inspiring me to really think about, can the world be different? And how might you do that? And I felt empowered, which is really the third component of my leadership style, being inclusive, collaborative, and to empower others, because everyone has skills and talents. And so when you ask me that question, this journey, how I got here, it was never chance. It was always other human beings who saw me as someone who had value, and if not today, that could turn around and help the next generation in a few years or the next day.
Beautiful. Thank you. Next question is for Reba. Reba, can you share how specific challenges you faced in your journey from India to corporate America have directly contributed to your development of key leadership qualities like assertiveness and empathy?
Yeah, I'll just echo the thank you. What an amazing group of human beings to be on a stage with. I'm humbled and I'm so honored to be here with all of you. And thank you for the book and especially your vulnerability. I read the first chapter and I didn't know your story. And it was incredibly, incredibly powerful. So everyone, please read the book. It's really, really important. So I was born in India and I came to this country when I was 2 years old. And I openly share the reason that I came to this country, and it's a somber one, but I'll tell you why I share it. So I came to this country because my father died by suicide. So I'm 2, my sister is 5, and my mother, who's the strongest woman on earth, picked us up and brought us to the United States, typical immigrant story to give us a better life. Now, the reason that I talk about my dad's suicide openly is first and foremost because I'm an advocate around mental health, and I think it's time for us to start talking more about it, and I actually think this next generation, our kids are doing that really, really beautifully. But I tell you that because it really was a formative part of what made me who I am, and I noticed for so many of us in the book, there was a level of kind of trauma that all of us experienced that actually informed our innermost selves. But for me, I was the kind of family clown. I was the one that brought light and life and joy into rooms where there was no light and no life and no joy and there was only sadness. And so I distinctly remember my mother, when things were hard, saying to me, Reba, play the piano. Or Reba, recite a poem. Or, make one of your funny faces. And I made everybody laugh. And I loved it. I loved making everybody laugh, and I loved making everybody smile. And then, so empathy came pretty naturally to me, right? And then I got to corporate America, and I was in like my, 4th or 5th job, and I was reading through some of my annual reviews, and I was noticing this theme, and the theme was, Reba's really nice. Everybody likes Reba. Reba doesn't like conflict. Reba can't deliver tough feedback. And you know what? It actually really pissed me off because I realized that I was behaving like that 8-year-old girl that was being asked to dance and sing and make everybody happy. And I had what Bill George calls a crucible moment where I realized if I don't figure out how to do this other thing, how to deal with conflict, how to deliver tough feedback, I'm actually not going to be successful in this job. I'm not going to achieve the levels that I want to achieve. I'm not going to make it in corporate America, and that's very much something that I want to do. So I actually had to practice and learn how to be assertive. And you know the magical part about it? I figured out that when I did deliver tough feedback, the first time I had to let someone go, I got to this I practiced so many times, y'all. Like I read my talking points and I read them to my husband. He's in HR. I read every talking point and he was like, yeah, you delivered that beautifully. And I was like, thank you so much. And then he goes, now remember, she's going to react. And I was like, what do you mean she's going to react? Like she's not going to let me read all of my talking points and just smile as I'm letting her go? He said, no, you actually have to prepare for her reaction. And I was like, oh, like that's a whole nother level. But what I figured out was that what I was doing was actually the kind thing. By delivering tough feedback, by saying to someone, you're not actually good at this job, you need to go find something else to do, that actually was a way of showing up and being kind and being empathetic. And you can deliver tough messages and be kind, and you can get results and you can be kind. And you can be successful and you can be kind in corporate America. And that's that campaign that Yasmin was talking about that I'm on currently in corporate America. So I would say to you, empathy came naturally. It's part of who I am and how I was raised. Being assertive was something that was a learned behavior for me.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Keetha, reflecting on your life journey, in what ways have the adversities you face contributed to your capacity for graciously assertive leadership? How do you use these experiences to inspire and motivate others?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for including me in this incredible book and along these incredible women. When you read the book, I'm having this moment of like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. I'm just Keetha from a community college graduate that I grew up in this teeny tiny little town in Texas. What am I doing here? So I'm having that moment right now. So I'm going to pull it together. Like the other women on this panel, we've all experienced adversity throughout our journeys, and for me, I grew up with two parents who were chronically ill, disabled. My mother was diagnosed with a chronic illness when she was very young, 19, and had to deal with that her entire life. My father served in the Vietnam War, and very young, within a matter of weeks of being there, was in battle and was shot in the head, and miraculously lived and recovered through it. He was paralyzed on the left side of his body. And then somehow the miracle of Keetha came along. And, growing up in a household with a chronically ill parent, a disabled parent, where nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about anybody was sick. Nobody talked about the disability, even though you could clearly see it. You did not talk about it. And God forbid you talk about the mental anguish and disability that came along with both of those. I mean, especially my father, I can't even imagine what he experienced. And nobody talked about it. So here I am, a kid growing up in this household. No doubt there are things that are happening in the household that shouldn't be happening, that a child shouldn't be experiencing it, and it's to no fault of my own, right? I just showed up as Keetha, as this miracle child. And so, I learned along my journey that I think, number one, like nobody was going to take care of me better than me. And I needed to own that. Like I needed to own that I needed to be okay no matter what was happening around me. And so, I think learning that self-care, I was an only child, so it was just me. I didn't even have any brothers or sisters to distract me. I would just lock myself in the room and entertain myself. And that taught me, it taught me to be okay. It taught me to be good being alone. It taught me to love myself. And it taught me how to kind of persevere through adversity. And so when I think about how that shows up in my leadership, I think the self-love and the self-care piece is the part that really shows up. Not only because I had to learn that along the way.
That you're the only woman out of only about over 150 that really has mastered the self-care and self-love.
It's so important. It's so important to me, and I feel like if I have to rely on someone else for my happiness, for my well-being, I'm going to constantly be disappointed, right? I'm going to be angry. I'm not going to get what I want. How am I supposed to expect someone else to know, what I want and I need? And so I feel very strongly that that is my responsibility to figure out what those things are. It is my responsibility to make the time for it and to do it. And I think it makes me a better human being, and it makes me a better person.
Beautiful, and I'm sure your honey here is very happy about that you didn't have to worry about making you happy all the time or taking care of you because you got that.
For the record, he does make me happy.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Senator, how has adversity in your life shaped your capacity for graciously assertive leadership and resilience?
Well, first of all, I just want to highlight a theme here, right? I almost feel like as we all sit up here, and first of all, let me thank Yasmin Davidds for being vulnerable. When I read the first part of the book, I think that's what resonated with me, because I'm very guarded. If anybody knows me, I'm very conservative, very guarded. And when you talked about your experience, your addiction, your life, it almost gave me permission to kind of do the same. And I've been working hard at it. To at least be more vulnerable and be able to show people, right? And when I hear all your stories, it's very similar to, I think, all of our upbringing. I have so many stories to tell. I almost feel like I'm a magnet for adversity. And, let me just start really quickly. I think growing up, I grew up in a really rough neighborhood. In fact, I have a name for it. You said you thought of yourself as that 8-year-old little girl. So my sister and I grew up, we grew up in downtown LA, not now, in the 70s when it was so difficult to be around downtown. Drugs, gangs, violence, everything you don't want to be around. And we used to live on Bonnie Brae. So every time I talk to my 8-year-old self, I always say I'm talking to the Bonnie Brae girl, and my sister also refers to herself as the Bonnie Brae girl. And I think that those experiences, make us so resilient. But I want to connect the dots. When I read the book, I think that's why I was so emotional when I talked to you, because I thought of that moment where I could have celebrated my young staffer, right? But we are resilient because we've had those experiences. For me, it's just go, and you don't stop to reflect necessarily on those around you. So when I thought about her later, I thought about how, for me, it would have been no big deal because, I was deported as a young girl. I was undocumented, deported. I mean, there's been so much in my life that I've had to overcome. So someone ignoring me and maybe not celebrating my success is not a big deal. But for that young staffer, I think that's why it hit me so hard that she doesn't have that resilience. She doesn't have that life history that has taught her that resilience. And for her, that moment would have meant so much. Perhaps for me, that I've lived so long and had so many experiences, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But I recognized after I read the book that for her, it was the moment that I could have celebrated her. But so I want to go back to what we were talking about. I have always been very guarded just because of my life experiences. But, when I was reading the book, and I say it on the forward, the way I mask sort of my experiences, my trauma is by working. And I say it in the book. People don't believe this. I work 7 days a week. I don't take a day off. My staff will attest to this. So as I'm going 7 days a week, I forget that I'm putting out there to my staff members that they almost have to keep up with me. And, believe me, when I say assertive, graciously assertive, it's not like you arrive. It continues to be a journey. Because even though I celebrated my staffer later, believe me, we're back in this, legislative year, and there's been moments where I have to reflect and say, I did it again. And I did it again. So it's almost permission to say, okay, if I fall, I just have to pick myself up. And I recognize that there's this desire, because of so much adversity when I was young, that you have to be perfect. It's almost like you're on a treadmill and you keep going and going, and you just don't stop. And after I read the book, like I said, my staff love it because I have to reflect, and I always say, give me a moment. I need to be a better human being, and I have to reflect, how am I going to approach this before I talk about the bill and my disappointment, or, now I reflect a lot. And so I think this is why it's important to read the book, because as someone that's dealt with so much adversity, it really didn't teach me to take care of me. It just taught me to keep going and going and going, which is not a healthy thing to do. It's not. I didn't have healthy boundaries. My staff now can tell you I'll take one day and they think that's successful, but I get really happy when I have a Sunday off. I'm like, I took Sunday off, because I don't. I work 7 days a week, and I don't know why or how it's not sustainable. After I read the book, you kind of have self-reflection, and I said, that is not sustainable. I cannot continue to work another 10 years, 7 days a week, and in the legislature, for example, on Tuesday, we go from 10 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. We still come back. You still have to reflect on what went well, what went wrong, and we're there till like 1 o'clock in the morning, and that is not, for me, I can do it, but now I have to really take into consideration what you wrote in the book. It's what you put out there. Do I want my staff burning themselves out? Do I want them to think that this is the standard? In order to keep up, they have to work 7 days a week, 24/7. And I recognized that I was not doing a service to my staff. In fact, this week alone, I kicked my staff out. It was 10 o'clock, and I said, I'm not leaving until you leave. And they kept saying, just 1 more hour. And I said, no, I'm not leaving until you leave. And I've learned that I have to lead by example. In other words, I have to walk away from the job in order for my staff to understand that it's okay, and it doesn't mean that their work quality is going to be less or that I'm going to appreciate it any less. And the work will be there. But I've learned to lead by example. I force myself to leave. And I do my work quietly at home, but in the office, I have to walk away for them to walk away. And I recognize, and it makes me really sad that they're there, because that's the standard I set. Nobody leaves, everyone works hard. And I don't ask of them, but it's what you put out, and I was putting out. Working is 7 days a week is the standard. And I've learned to slow down and put some boundaries, so thank you to your book. That's taught me. It's still a journey, but I reflect, I learn, and I pick myself up, and I keep trying to do better.
We call that in program progress, not perfection. Always in progress. Thank you for that.
I have more work to do. Like more of like that internal work to understand how my childhood has influenced the work choices that I am making, right? Including trying to serve in the middle of a crisis, right? And in every job, working for the budget committee at the age of 24, a crisis, a fiscal crisis for the state of California. And so I'll do more reflection on that. But my childhood, and I mentioned a little bit about it, but I think it's really important. Number one, read the book. Number two, I think we all carry stories with us. And so while mine starts in foster care, and yours may as well, a lot of my journey was really relying on other people to open doors, to see a value in me. And number one is I never found a family. And the hardest part for me was having to testify in a courtroom against my own parents. But it also gave me that courage, that internal courage to choose for myself what my life would look like. At the same time, I ended up living with my chemistry teacher at the age of 17 because I had emancipated from the foster care system at 17, and all of your services at that time ended at 17. When I made it, I was a teacher. That was my first job. And when I made it to Sacramento, that was the first bill that I worked on with Karen Bass to extend services for foster youth until the age of 26. And that is now the reality of our state. But I share that with you because that journey was not easy, but you have choice. You make a choice to see your story as an inspiration and to bring the next generation with you, whether it's running a bill or just mentoring someone else. And I was reflecting this morning as I was getting ready on when I first met you, and I was at a really critical, pivotal point. Number one, I wanted to quit grad school, you should know. And today is our almost like 2 months away from our anniversary of first meeting each other. I was a first-year grad student, 10 years.
Okay.
I was a first year in grad school, and you came over. We invited you to come share one of your books on negotiations with all the UC Santa Barbara Latinas. And at the time, one of the people in the room was Senator Monique Limon, who went to grad school with me, and she met you, and that inspired her to run for office in San Diego. So she went from a school board member to now Senator Monique Limon. But I share that because I remember that day, one of the most important things that you taught me and the other women was that if you don't know your why, then you're going to constantly wonder, and in every negotiation, whether you are worthy of asking for what you deserve. And you said you need to narrow it down 2 to 3 sentences, and that's your compass because you are the CEO of your life. And so I remember working on it really, really hard, and every year I review it, but now it's just become a part of who I am. And so every interview that I go to, or when I have really tough conversations with employees, right, number one is anyone that I work with understands where I came from, because that is a badge of honor. That's not something I'm ashamed of. But it also helps me understand that they have their own story. And so my 2 sentences, even until today, came from that meeting 10 years ago. And it's always been this: in my lifetime, I will be a public servant that transforms California's public institutions to serve Californians with dignity and compassion. So every job that I choose, everything that I do or choose not to do, and how I show up is grounded in public service and in dignity and compassion. And that came from that childhood, not because I had dignity and compassion every day in surviving a K-12 system or a foster care system, but because that is the way that I choose to see the world. And that is the world that I want for other people.
Beautiful, thank you. Powerful. Reba, you mentioned that caring for others comes naturally to you, but balancing this with business needs is something you've had to work on. Can you share a specific example where you successfully balanced empathy and assertiveness to resolve a complex issue?
Yeah, I think I'll share the story of negotiating the 100 billion, that's billion with a B. Sometimes I say million and people go, wow, and I go, no, it's $100 billion investment by U.S. Bank over the next 5 years. And the empathy part of it was that we started by listening. So I took my CEO, who is not a fan of meetings or words, he's a numbers guy, to 6 hours of community listening sessions with over 208 community leaders, many of them right here in California. And it started with listening. We just listened. We listened to the good things, what they liked about the bank, and we listened to the things that they didn't like about financial services, about banking, where we were falling short. We heard the good, the bad, the ugly. So we started by listening. And then every one of the organizations, there were 3 major organizations that we were in negotiations with, wrote out the list of what they wanted. It was over 200 line items of individual asks of what they wanted of U.S. Bank. So that's the kindness, the empathy, the listening. The tough part came in when we looked at that list of over 200 things and we said, there are things on this list that we can do. There are things on this list that we can explore. And then there are things on this list, some for regulatory reasons, we can't actually do them. Or we're not good at this at U.S. Bank. It doesn't make sense for us to do this. It would take us off of our mission, our business model. And so we had to say no to community groups that we had just spent hours listening to and saying, yes, thank you so much for your feedback, but no, we can't do some of these things. But in my job, I always have to balance what is right for community with what is right for U.S. Bank. And that's where I think I get into the toughest situations of wanting to be kind and wanting to be empathetic, but needing to be assertive in what's right for the bank.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you. We have time for one more question for Keetha and one more question for the senator. Keetha, how has your approach to graciously assertive communication influenced dynamics and performance of your team? Can you provide an example of a situation where the communication style led to a positive outcome?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think our culture at the Foundation for California Community Colleges of shared leadership and the core values that we try to uphold really speak to the attributes of graciously assertive communication. And the culture of shared leadership is really about empowering everyone in the organization as a leader, no matter where they sit in the organization, whether they're at the front desk or they're running a multi-million-dollar program or everything in between. People are leaders, and we hire really smart, talented people that we want them to be able to shine in their skills and to really show their leadership. And so a huge part of that is a lot of collaboration, really open communication, a lot of kind of collective decision making or collaborative decision making with a lot of input. A lot of it is, you know, whether you're the manager or your associate, recognizing when you're in a situation and you have the best skills to be able to step up and lead through whatever the situation is, being empowered to do that. And as the manager, being able to check your ego as the manager to step aside and say, you know what, there are other people in this room that have skills that are different than I have to help us problem solve. And so as I was reading the book and reading the attributes of the graciously assertive communication, I thought about it as kind of first starting with like curiosity, and starting from a place of wanting to hear what others think. Like you may have an idea and you may think, oh, I know what the answer is. But I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, it's not the best answer. And that's been my experience. If I can surround myself with people that have kind of different ideas, different skill sets, different talents, different knowledge, 9 times out of 10, whatever I thought for sure that was the answer isn't anywhere near what the answer is or should be. And so I think, being able to bring people together, being able to check your ego, being able to empower others, hiring people that are smarter than you, know things that you don't know. I don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of Keethas, right? I want to be surrounded by people who will lift us all up. And I really think that that's a huge part of the secret sauce of our success at the foundation. You mentioned earlier, we were coming on stage, the growth that we've achieved, and I feel strongly that that growth is really a huge part of our culture of shared leadership, our culture of empowering people throughout the organization, and really letting our leaders throughout the organization lead and do the good work only they know how to do best.
Beautiful, thank you. I know we're out of time, but I want to have one last question for the Senator. In what ways do you currently create a supportive and empowering environment for those you lead to embrace vulnerability and growth?
Well, thank you for that. I'll try to be quick. Going back to the book, and I know after we leave, you're all going to have to read it because there's so much to learn from. But, one of the things that I found very empowering is the fact that I think all of us here, if you are CEOs or managers, we tend to sort of lead in wholesale, meaning I have Monday staff meetings. That's been the norm for the last 6 years that I've been a senator. Every Monday we have staff meetings, and it's almost like we talk at them. And so what I've learned to do better to empower my staff is, instead of having that wholesale, let's have one staff meetings and let's all talk, I try to set one-on-one meetings with each of my staff members. So what I used to do is assign issue areas, transportation, climate change, And now what I've done is I've changed it. Through these meetings, one-on-one meetings, what I do now is I actually take the time to ask them, what is the area that you're interested in? What do you want to learn? And then I also ask, what are your goals? Because I've changed the way I do things. Instead of telling them what areas I want them to work on, they tell me what they want to work on, and then I give them that area of expertise, because there's so much learning that goes on in what we do at the legislature. So not only are they learning what they're interested in, but I also take into consideration what their goal is. If their goal is to someday be a CEO of a bank, well, then I'm going to make sure that they staff me in banking. If they want to somehow work in transportation, well, they're going to carry my bills and work on my bills on transportation. And so I've learned that they take ownership. They get excited. It's not just work, it's where their goal is headed. And they do a lot better, because now I'm mixing a little bit of that empathy. I'm saying, what do you need? Tell me about you. How can I help you? Versus let's do this and let's go. It's really been a challenging time in that, I have 12 staff members, so I have to figure out how to meet with every single one of them during the week. And I'm almost there where I managed to meet with everyone once a week on a one-on-one. And I think that that's really important, because I think we miss the mark when we talk at them of what we want. And through this, how do I empower them? Because now they feel a little bit more confident in telling me what they like to see. And I do take the time to say, what did you think about that? How did I do? And they're starting to be more honest about things, and they're starting to challenge me to do better. I mean, I've just yesterday I had a new staff member who we had so many Memorial Day celebrations. I did them all day, and the last person says, "Oh, you could have done a lot better. Right here where you got stuck?" And I was so proud of this young new person because I think it was 7 people that staffed me throughout the day. And they call me the baton. Like one will take me for an hour, and then the other, and then the other, and I'm the only constant. But as I go on, they'll say like, "Senator, you were great, and you were great." But the last person said, the last one was a lot better. You could have done this. And I felt so proud of this person that told me I wasn't the greatest. And I think that's what it's all about, because if everyone's always telling you how good you are, then how do you grow? How do you learn? And so I thought that was an important step, but I think it boils down to not having a staff meeting where everyone kind of hears the same thing. You have to individualize it. How do you help that person grow? And I'm learning that that's how they become better versions of themselves. If I want to be better, then I also want them to reciprocate and tell me when I'm not doing the very best and when I'm not the best version of myself. And so they're getting better at telling me honestly what they think of my ideas and my performances. So I thought that was important.
I love it. Everybody, please give our amazing leaders here, our graciously assertive leaders, a round of applause. Thank you for being here. Ladies, you inspire me. Thank you. You're amazing. And we're going to take pictures here on stage, so don't leave. Reese, I think you have a... Oh, there you are.
I'm right here. Thank you all. I hope you're inspired and that you're going to purchase the book. If you have not already, Dr. Yasmin will be outside to sign your books. After she's done taking photographs, please also enjoy dessert and coffee as you exit the gala here. So thank you all.
And don't be afraid to come up to the leaders and speak to them and ask them any questions you want.
Oh. But please enjoy the coffee and desserts on your way out, and go ahead and form your lines for Dr. Yasmin to sign your books. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.